He is my co-host at Fox and Friends Weekend on Off the Wall, on Off the Grid, which we record on Fox and Friends during the weekdays, as we did just this morning on Fox and Friends, and now Off the Rails here on the Will Kane Show. What's up, man? What do you think? This is going to be an away game for Trump. It's not only going to be on CNN. Joe Biden has rejected the Presidential Debate Commission, I believe. He's going to go ahead and let CNN make its own rules. The rules, by the way, Pete, include no live studio audience and Donald Trump's mic being muted, when Joe Biden has the floor. This is, I don't know if there's a win here for Donald Trump.
Well, the win is getting Biden to debate him. I think that's why he jumped at it so quickly. Biden agreeing to do this is only a reflection of the weakness of his campaign. He doesn't see his campaign is weak. His poll numbers are weak. He is weak. So he puts together a highly edited 13-second, I'm coming after you, Donald, to try to look strong in the moment of his greatest weakness, which is let's have the debate in June. By the way, Will, they just announced they agreed to a second one, September 10th, ABC. So now both of them are apparently locked. Both are away games. But the idea of a June debate is, well, if he really does kick the bucket, then hopefully voters can forget about it. And you think he'll agree to the second one if the first one's a disaster? He'll push that one aside too. And by not being a part of the Presidential Commission, you're not a part of the process, which means everything is ad hoc. It's just a negotiation with the Trump camp and the television studio that's hosting the debate. You cut all that other red tape out of it. So it's a reflection of weakness. I think Trump, listen, we'll debate this a lot, and we're all kind of taking this in real time. He'll take it. Listen, you can cut his mic. He'll still talk. No studio audience, doesn't need one. Debate, the moderator is going to be biased no matter what, so he can play off both of them, play off the bias in the media and the incapability of Biden. Biden still has to talk, and that's what Trump wants. I'll take it. I said I'd debate you anywhere. If you say anywhere, anytime, whatever, anything, then you better take it when it's given, and he did, and we'll all be watching. It's going to be great.
This was all very WWE. Everything from this morning leading up to the announcement of these debates felt scripted. So Joe Biden puts out his video, which again was pre-produced and edited, and Donald Trump even responding in record time seemed to be followed directly by a confirmation that the debate would be on CNN, and they had certain rules already in place. Now, in order for that to take place, they would have had to negotiate some of these rules. Donald Trump would have had to accept some of these rules, and CNN would have had to put together a press release. And you and I know very well that doesn't happen in 10 minutes. That goes through several drafts across many desks. And so everything that happened this morning, Pete, it wasn't actually a negotiation, offer and acceptance in real time. This was very WWE.
Not at all. Absolutely. In fact, Axios put out kind of a sneak peek thing here, and it said the Biden-Trump campaigns have been back-channeling conversations about cutting out the commission for a long time. You know, the other thing they want to cut out really bad, both sides, RFK Jr. They don't want him on the debate stage. So I think by making this a arbitrary set of parameters with individual networks. Apparently, CNN is saying they're going to say 4 polls over 15% is what would qualify you to get on the debate stage. Kennedy has had 1 poll at 16% recently, so it's not like it's outside the realm of possibility. But I do think they'll try to find a way to box him out. Neither camp wants him there. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but they want a binary choice. They don't want the Ross Perot on stage, stealing oxygen, punching both of them, changing the debates and taking it in odd directions, taking the spotlight off of Joe Biden or distracting away from it. So that's the collusion here between the campaigns. Fine, we know Biden has to debate. He's behind. If you're behind, you have to submit yourself to that. But yeah, definitely WWE. Scripted. Let's go.
Well, to the point of Joe Biden being behind and all of these rules and all of these accommodations being a sign of weakness, Nate Silver, Pete, who's never been accused by anyone sane of being on the right, tweeted, so Biden wants 2 debates instead of the traditional 3 and also wants them much earlier, which makes them less impactful. It's consistent with his strategic incentives, which are that He can't be seen as ducking debates, but he's not particularly confident he'll win. If you're confident that you'll win the debates, you'd ask for 2 early debates in addition to the 3 late ones, at least as a bargaining position. He said, and this is also the campaign and the candidate who's supposed to stand up for norms and traditions, and now he is ducking this tradition of the debate.
That's a great point.
And then he posts the letter that the Biden-Harris administration put out announcing the president will not be participating in the Commission of Presidential Debates. This is going to be the first time, as you pointed out, it's directly negotiated and aired with mediators, first CNN and then ABC. And look, I understand on the other side is well, this is a projection of weakness. Donald Trump's position is a projection of strength. I mean, he is confident that even with an away game, even with rules that are probably going to be rigged against him or unfavorable, even with moderators who will be anything but objective, that he can go into an arena and beat Joe Biden. Do you think there is, and I always like to play devil's advocate with myself, Pete. I understand all of that. Biden is so incredibly weak, he can't record a 13-second video without at least 5 different cuts. But has Trump given too much away? Like, is there something, if you give everything away in this particular forum, can Joe Biden come out with a win for independents who might just need to see competence, a lack of frailty, just a very low bar of performing and appearing present at the debate?
The answer is yes, it could backfire, of course. I mean, if they find the right cocktail of ingredients for Joe to jack him up and he's able to fight to not even a draw, just a not a massacre because the expectations are so low, and then he somehow is able to score a point or 2 here on an issue here. I just don't see that happening. And if you watch Trump right now at the top of his game, as capable as he was 7 years ago, going up against Joe's diminished ability, it's not even close. And the Trump campaign is actually getting something it wanted here. The Presidential Commission on Debates wanted the debates to happen mostly in late September and October, when a lot of early votes had already been cast. And you could argue that Biden would benefit from a really late debate because most of the votes would be banked already for him or for Trump. So moving it up to June and into September puts it before almost any state does any early voting at all. I think the September debate, that new news about one in September 10th, is really important. Either one could have an opportunity for Trump to, or both, Trump to wipe the floor with him. But you see Biden surviving both and looking good in both and not having a sort of blue screen of death, complete meltdown moment in either. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to resort to anger. That's going to be his default, which I don't think wears very well if Trump can maintain his composure, which I think he would in this context. So I still think, yes, there's risk. But if you say anywhere, anytime, and he says, okay, then you take it. Now, the Trump team's still going to work the refs. They're still going to say, well, which CNN host, which ABC host, and they're good at that. So there's still details to be worked out. But this was choreographed. Both sides must see it as beneficial, and we get to watch.
Speaking of debates, one broke out here on the Will Kane Show behind the scenes. The producers of the Will Kane Show, Tinfoil Pat and Two-A-Days Dan, they believe, I think even Young Establishment James, that the audience is on to something when it comes to me. There was this moment this weekend on Fox and Friends where I revealed the biggest conspiracy about my performance on Fox and Friends. So let's revisit that, and you can jump in here on whether or not the producers are just conspiracy theorists like the audience of Fox and Friends. Watch.
I mean, this is not comfortable.
He posts up.
This is comfortable.
I tilt the body a little bit, and then I consciously take my knees and just push them in a little bit.
I get 2 things: that and why do you dye your hair? I've never dyed my hair. Not once have I dyed my hair.
You don't have any white hair, hardly.
It is pretty impressive. I mean, he's holding on to it.
You know what
hard.
that means?
Magnesium?
Well, vitamins.
I've been taking magnesium, not helping.
After I told you that, you started popping the magnesium?
I did.
You have less white.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Sweating.
He's dying it
I
or
always
he's
sweat
taking
6 in the
vitamins?
morning. Am I really? Does it really look less? I've been
Yes.
taking magnesium gummies.
That is true.
This is a conversation on Fox and Friends about manspreading to start. I get a lot of feedback. Why do you manspread? I also get, why do you bounce your knee? I even had a comment yesterday on a totally unrelated topic of somebody saying to me on Instagram, I turned the channel because you bounce your knee so much. Well, I say, I mean,
I've
my
never
response to that
noticed
is I
that.
bounce
Now
my
I'm
knee
gonna
because
look
I'm
for it.
afraid. Yeah, well, I bounce my knee because I'm afraid that one viewer is going to change the channel. So we're in a real death cycle here between me and that viewer. So, but I do have trouble not manspreading. I don't know what to say about that. It's the comfortable way my hips sit, and I don't dye my hair. And the producers here, the Willisha of the Will Kane Show, they say I'm too suspiciously defying the odds, that my hair is too dark at too an advanced age, that I should be gray. And I must be dyeing my hair. Save me, Pete.
I'm with your producers. I'm with the Willisha on this one. How many years have you been on Fox and Friends Weekend, Will? How many years?
3.5.
Three, 4? Yeah. I mean, that's too much. That's too long as a morning show host at your aged state to not have any gray hairs at all. I mean, I started Fox and Friends with hair that looks like yours. And now this is where I'm at right now. And I am taking magnesium gummies, but it's not working despite what Rachel said. And there's like a little, I think to your producers, there's a little bit of gray that pops in right here for Will, but I think he lets that be just as a little camouflage for what he's done with the rest of it. And I think, as one of your producers mentioned to me before in my IFB, I think you're a TV guy, you understand this, so you got ahead of it. You started dyeing before you needed to, so that once the grays started coming in, no one would see it. So it's too good to be true.
Not once. No, zero hair dye in my life. Ever once has there been hair dye. I mean, and to your point, I looked this up just for the record. I don't have good statistics, but there is a rule. It's called the 50-50-50 rule. 50% of the population will have 50% gray hair by the age of 50. Now, there's also stats that say the average person starts to gray, the average white guy person starts to gray in his 30s. Average black guy, for what it's worth, starts to gray in his 40s. I just did this quick NIH study, and we know that's solid rock gold. So whatever's coming from the NIH is
vastly above average.
Not gray,
is
it's
what
gold.
You're saying. You're vastly above average.
I'm just above average. I'm not. This is not it's not as absurd as one might think. And the things that make you go gray are lack of sleep and stress. And I will say it's happening. Fox and Friends is getting me. And by the way, Pete, I got to talk to you. They've got me scheduled for 2 nights of 4 hours of sleep this week. And I've said to them, I'm too old to be getting 4 hours of sleep 2 nights in a row, you know? But
why are you
submitting?
You must be submitting yourself to some sort of a voluntary activity the evening before, which I feel like would be your fault.
Yes, one being Fox related, the Morgan Wallen concert on Friday night, and then have to host the next morning. And then that morning, Friday morning, they want me at pickleball in Fort Worth with Steve Ducey. And so, I'm like, guys, I'm going to be up at 4 and I'm going to be up until 11, and then I'm up at 4 again. And then I kind of want to go to the American Country Music Awards on Thursday night, but now I'm debating that. I can't really do that because that's 2 nights in a row of 4 hours sleep, and I'm too old for this, and I'm going to be gray like Hegseth.
Yeah, I mean, throw in a Mavericks game, and it's like your own personal Iwo Jima. Like, how are you going to do it? I have no idea.
We all have our battles. We all have our wars. Every man needs a war. I learned that somewhere.
I get it.
I think it might have been.
You're going gray, man.
I think it might have been on the War on Warriors. Taught me every man needs a war. All right, so I think this is a legitimately interesting question, and I don't like to leap from the highest cliff first, but the war on Christianity. So it's actually hard to kind of escape this. So Harrison Butker, the kicker for the Kansas City Chiefs, gave a commencement address at Benedictine College, which is a Catholic college. And he talked a lot about some different things he believes about culture and society and religion. Let's listen to a little bit of what Harrison Butker had to say at Benedictine.
While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder. Our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. He is not alone.
He's talking there about President Joe Biden. He did also go on to say, Pete, I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and a mother. The headlines scream, USA Today, Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker's speech was ugly. He's only part of a bigger problem. The Athletic, Pete, owned by the New York Times, wrote it up and said Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker says Pride Month is an example of a deadly sin during commencement speech. He did talk about Pride Month. He said, I'm not talking about, he said, you need God-centered pride, not the kind of pride we celebrate in June, which is a sin. I went through what he had to say, Pete. It is pretty standard fare for a conservative Christian. And what I find fascinating is the response to what he had to say, because all of these headlines have essentially equated views that are conservative Christian with bigotry. The headlines are just short of almost the same tone had Harrison Butker gotten up there and used the N-word in a commencement address to Benedictine.
Yeah, I mean, it's very predictable at this point. Another headline I'm looking at right now, the headline is Travis Kelce's teammate, Harrison Butker, which means what they really want is to tie this to comments from Travis Kelce, tie this to comments from Taylor Swift, tie this into a larger cultural conflict inside the locker room, inside our media. He even quoted Taylor Swift. So I guess Harrison Butker sort of invited that a little bit by knowing that if he quotes Taylor Swift, it's going to pull in Travis Kelce. So they're talking to sideline reporters who are saying, you know, how can we have to reject this type of viewpoint. First of all, I salute Harrison Butker for having the courage to speak up and defend his Christian faith to a very conservative, conservative Catholic audience and a commencement address that actually took on real issues, didn't laud them with platitudes, but simply said, you're entering a really dangerous world that rejects most of what you think and feel. And it took a lot of us a long time to recognize that things of this world that were sold to us are empty and vapid. God's will. That was the pivot. Because I watched this. If you're actually seeking God's will in your life and not the world's will, everything changes. And that's the biggest change for anybody who's truly trying to seek God is, am I seeking God's will or my will? And how do I determine that? Well, I go to his word. Oh man, you go to his word, there's a lot of things in there that clash with what the world says is right. And he emphasized a lot of those things in his speech, which means that celebrated as a homemaker, celebrated that she loves being a mother, and believes that's the most important job she'll ever have. He didn't say it in a condescending way at all to working people, to working mothers. Just recognize there's a ton of value there. My wife would say the same, and probably your wife would say the same. And a lot of wives would say the same. Like, hey, we had the potential to have whatever career we want, but we found the most enrichment and the most value in pouring ourselves into our kids as future citizens, men or women. So I salute him completely. I think he should stand strong in his convictions. It'll be very interesting to see what the Kansas City Chiefs do. They shouldn't do anything, by the way. They should just say, he's entitled to his own beliefs. He's a private citizen who has his a faith, and he's a great kicker, so he's on our team. But the blowback is predictable, and he knew it would come at him. I salute him for giving it anyway. This is what Christians need to do. Say, we believe this for real. We want to live this way, and therefore we're going to speak the truth, regardless of where the current cultural winds are heading. So I love that he gave the speech.
We started to have a little bit of trouble with your connection there in the middle of what you had to say, but we picked it back up and understood everything you had to say there, Pete. But I guess for me, the thing about it is, you can have a disagreement with Harrison Butker, but what I find fascinating about the reaction is this movement towards what you said is true. He didn't say anything hateful. He said, basically, certain things are a sin under my religion. Sin and hate are not one and the same because every man is guilty of sin. It's about the pursuit of virtue, and so it's really not breaking news. It has been, certain things have been qualified as a sin for all of, I don't know about all of humanity, but the vast majority of Western civilization, Judeo-Christian ethics. And so Harrison Butker, validating or acknowledging that in no way can be deemed bigoted or hatred. It just simply is. And if you're going to act like that is bigoted or hatred, what you are saying underneath the surface is Christianity is bigoted or hate-filled. And then secondarily, for him to celebrate the traditional role, and I emphasize the word celebrate, of a mother is also not backwards as it's been written in all these things. It's not, it's something that we've talked about here. I talked about it with Dr. Nicole Saphier last week on the Will Kane Show. To say, hey, the most important thing you'll ever do in your life is raise children and build a home and build a family. To act like that is backwards, I'm sorry. I think I think those that suggest that is somehow immoral are the ones guilty of immorality. You can pursue other things. That's fine. He says that. Go on to have a successful career, but my suspicion is you'll do nothing more valuable than build that family, than raise those children. And I think that both reactions lead us to the underlying discussion, which is being avoided, is, are you just saying that family and Christianity are evil? We should just get there if we're going to get there. Let's get to that debate if that's where we're headed, because it sure seems like that's underneath your surface.
I think we're already there. And what you hear is that sort of roar up of people who, listen, we all are sinners. We all have idols. The question is what they are and what do we do about them? And Harrison Butker would say the very same thing. And for a lot of men and for a lot of women, our idols are of this world. It's our career, it's the next rung, it's our success, it's our health, it's our image, it's our look, it's our dyed hair like you, like whatever it is, we've got idols that we can't overcome. And what he's simply saying is the world's selling you a bill of goods. That's what it said in the Old and New Testament. That's what Jesus talked about, that ultimately honoring God and his law sets us free is something the world and the devil has to reject. And so when he says you're a male, be masculine, don't be emasculated, women don't be afraid to command your household. I say all of that agreeing with everything that you said, but he clearly knew he was going to poke a bear here, because he did quote, I'm looking at this right now, he did say, as my teammate's girlfriend said, familiarity breeds contempt. So I don't know what his relationship is to Travis Kelce. That a lot of it depends on that. If they're buds and he knew that it would not be an issue for him to say that, then it's maybe not a big deal. But if he was doing it in a way that would create a rub between them, then that's between them and their locker room. But there is a war on Christianity. Will, you can't. The things he said are the things I've heard in my pews for decades, right? It depends on how we live them out. It's just the left is trying to force them out of the public square. Say we have to have a secular public square. We have to have a secular media. We have to have secular schools. That's the only thing we can talk about. Don't impose your views on me. And we've gone along with that, as opposed to saying, no, this is what I believe. This is who I am. And I'm going to say it out loud. And giving speeches like this are a part of doing that. And it's great to see.
Well, my sin that you're accusing me of would be vanity. And on that war, I would tell you, after seeing Tom Brady at his roast, I have not yet begun the fight. I have not yet begun to indulge my vanity. Speaking of bigotry, you want to hear some blatant bigotry? This will be fun. Watch this. Here is the mayor of New York.
How do we have a large body of people that are in our city and country that are excellent swimmers, and at the same time we need lifeguards? And the only obstacle is that we won't give them the right to work to become a lifeguard.
So New York City has a lifeguard shortage, but you know what they have? According to Mayor Eric Adams, they got a lot of illegal immigrants. And you know what? They're good swimmers. Now, Pete, and so problem meets solution. Pete, I'm sitting here trying to figure out, what's he doing? Like where did this comment? This is an interestingly bigoted comment. Like, I'm trying to figure out where he got this. Is he like, is he doing a Cuba thing? Because they don't swim from Cuba. So then that takes me back to the Rio Grande in Texas. And he's saying, what evidence does he have that illegal immigrants are strong swimmers? The Rio Grande? Are we getting back to that? Like, what are we doing here, Mayor?
Yeah, I think it's a Rio Grande comment. I don't know what else it could be. I also, I mean, he's going, they got here somehow. They head across a body of water. They must be good swimmers. First of all, look, what a rookie move. What a rookie. We forget how many of these politicians are just rookies. They're just in front of a microphone. They're bad at it. They have stream of conscious comments. They take private conversations and make them public, but they don't understand where the guardrails are, and they're not that smart. And I think Eric Adams on a lot of occasions fits that. But I also think he said I hate this phrase, but the quiet part out loud. He admitted what illegal immigration is about for a lot of these big city mayors, which is a workforce you can pay nothing, a cheap labor to replace workers that either have decided to leave or won't work for a cheap enough wage to do it. So that's always been a huge part of this. The reason he's making these comments is he's begging for work permits for all these illegals that are in his city, wrecking it, but he can't get it because it's unlawful. And he needs lifeguards. I'm just going to leave it right there. There's nothing else to say other than he's an idiot and has maybe seen.
I'm going to start a segment. I'm going to start a segment. Imagine if it was said by a Republican, and we can run this, and we can just go back to last week where the governor of New York said black kids have never seen a computer, don't understand computers. So we can just get a greatest hits of clips and say, imagine if it was said by a Republican. Last topic here with you, Hegseth. I'm really interested in this topic, and I'm interested in what you have to say. And it's got less structure, but here's what happened. Last night, Caitlyn Clark made her WNBA regular season debut. She scored 20, had 10 turnovers. She is trending as we speak right now. She's trending on X, she's trending on Google, she's trending everywhere. So there is clearly a large appetite of interest still in Caitlyn Clark. The question will be, does it translate into ratings? And do those ratings mean more than a novelty? When the WNBA first came out in the late 90s, they did 3 to 5 million viewers. It then went back after the novelty wore off and now has trouble garnering 1 million viewers for the game. And here's what I find fascinating, Pete. Like, NBA, so professional basketball seems to have accomplished something that Caitlyn Clark has accomplished, which is relevance. Online relevance. People talk about the NBA on Twitter. People watch highlights of the NBA on Instagram. People debate the NBA on television. But you know what hasn't happened? People watching the NBA. So the ratings do not seem to correlate to the relevance. And then I think about that when it comes to Caitlyn Clark. Like, okay, she has relevance online. People talk, people want to read, people want to see something about Caitlyn Clark. But do they actually care about the game? In cases the NBA, in this case, the WNBA.
Well, you know this subject better than I, but I think a lot of that relevance is predicated on more cultural questions that end up surrounding it, right? I mean, there's this idea, is she only liked because she's a white girl from Iowa as opposed to a black girl from somewhere else? And is that a dynamic? There's all these Is she good looking? Is that why? All of that stuff to me doesn't matter, but it becomes what the chattering class ends up talking about and an unfortunate side effect. And of course, that's where X and others pick up and they throw fuel on that fire, and it becomes a big old debate about that. I got caught up in it, but just by watching her in the NCAA tournament. But my sense is, because I know they played 2 preseason games, and now this was the first game of the year. I think we're gonna see the relevancy and the interest plummet pretty quick. And it's not that she's not good; she's great. She won't be as much of a standout in a WNBA full of other stars who are bigger, stronger. There's a physical aspect to this too. In seeing a couple of the highlights, there were a lot of veterans in that game that were like, "No, Caitlyn Clark, sit down, wait your turn. This ain't happening." So they're gonna, just like they did to Isaiah Thomas back in the Pistons back in the day. Like, hey, you've had too much spotlight. We're gonna put you in your place. So I do think it's gonna return back to the mean. Maybe Indiana Fever games will get a little bit of a pop, and they'll try to promote them heavily. But I don't think you're going to see a change in viewership. I see the same with buddies with the NBA too. I don't know. I'll watch my team. But even when I watch my team, I'll pop in and out of it. Not like I watch in a different way than I watch football, which is I will not miss a down. In the NBA, you can leave for 3 minutes. Scores changed a little bit. Maybe there's been a little bit of a run. Just a different kind of product. So the WNBA just is what it is, and Caitlyn Clark will change it a little bit, but I don't. And I this comes from somebody who I told you says she's different. She's amazing, but I'm not going to turn on the WNBA. Maybe if she's on to see a little bit, but not a whole game. There's no chance.
So this makes me think 2 things. This entire conversation about Caitlyn Clark made me think about 2 things. First of all, I'm just kind of fascinated, Pete, by the difference between relevance, attention, and I don't know what the next thing I'm differentiating it from would be, but a connection, an audience, a business. Well, I think it applies to us as well. You can chase virality and relevance online, but it doesn't necessarily translate into an audience, a connection, and a business. So I think that's what's happening to the NBA. You see it in politics all the time, by the way. People do what we do, right? Oh, that person is a big influencer on X, but that person doesn't have a true connection to a broader audience that has added up to a business. And this is how I apply it to the WNBA or the NBA. I think a lot of people are reading about Caitlyn Clark, and then I think a lot of people are consuming the NBA through social media, but don't actually watch the product. And that's not good for the NBA. They have to watch the product. They have to watch the game. That is the business in the end. For television rights, for advertising, that's what feeds it. And so whatever is happening in the attention world hasn't shown a direct connection to the offline real world of including simply who's putting butts in seats and who's tuning in on television. That's one level. The other level is what you brought up, the NBA. I'm not even sure how good of a watch it is. Right now, I'm watching the NHL and the NBA playoffs at the same time, right? And I'm going to tell you something. The hockey playoffs are more entertaining. And it seems to me, my theory is you've got 2 different types of basketball games. This is what happens. One of these 2 games is what you get in the NBA. You get a blowout. That's one thing you get. Or you get nothing matters until the last 7 minutes. The first 3.5 quarters do not matter until the last 7 minutes. You get one of those 2 things. So like the Mavs the other day, Pete, and I know you're tuned into the Wolves, but they dominated the Thunder. They were up. It was getting close to 20 points. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, doesn't matter. None of this matters. There will be a run. Something will happen. This will all even out. And what's going to happen is this thing is going to come down to what happens in the last 7 minutes. And I think both of those outcomes, blowout or it doesn't matter for 3/4 of the game, aren't good for actually building your business of having someone connected to your product of watching the NBA.
Agreed. The favorite game I watched of the Wolves this year was one where I was in London. I couldn't watch the game. It was off time zones. I had to go to bed. There was no chance. And I watched it on Instagram, and I have not had more fun than watching the game on a splice of 25 clips on Instagram from the Wolves feed that brought me great joy. And the other thing is, I think time matters. Like, I didn't watch last night's game for the Wolves because it was on at 9:30 p.m. Central Time, 10:30 Eastern Time. I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to go to bed, and I'm going to wake up in the morning with my fingers crossed and watch them lose again. But so I don't know how you fix that or change that. I do think, by the way, the Caitlyn Clark thing, just one more thing. I don't know how they go from a whole collegiate season straight into the WNBA. I think that's going to be a factor. Like, that's not how it works in NBA basketball. You get a little bit of time. Like, I think she stepped straight off the court, the national championship game or whatever it was, semifinal, and was immediately practicing for Indiana, and that's going to have a cost. You understand the business side of this stuff better than I do. As a fan, you're right. There's just some NHL hockey, incredible. I just don't follow anybody, but when you watch it, the action never stops. In sports where action never stops, draw your attention. And in the NBA, there's just a lot of breaks and a lot of stops. And you're right. Nothing matters really until I know that moment in the game. It's like, okay, here we go. Now I have to watch.
Right.
And if you don't make it to that point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So the long and short for me is I don't know that Caitlyn Clark's relevance is all going to add up to anything that matters for the WNBA. I could be wrong. We'll see. So. We'll see. Oh, it's going to take a period of years to see if those ratings are more than a novelty. And by the way, you know something about swings in basketball. I mean, I'm not making fun of you. I'm saying seriously, like, playing basketball has got to feel something similar to watching basketball, right? Oh, we're up by 20. How safe can you actually feel,
especially
in a game like that?
Keep it. Hey, all we got to do is keep it close. That's the whole. You realize pulling ahead is important and great, but it's not always as beneficial as you think. Just keep it close and then close out the game. You're right. It's a feeling you have even on the court. There's no way they can avoid it in the NBA where they play 82 games. How could you not?
Right. All right, there he is, former Princeton basketball star and my co-host of Off the Grid, Pete Hegseth.
See you, brother.